This video will look at how you can develop your coding by reviewing and refining your codes. As I begin to read through the transcript and the coding I've done already, I can see I've already made a mistake. This particular reference here is coded to connection down east, but in hindsight I don't really think it belongs in this particular theme. If I click on the coding stripe, I can see this whole segment is highlighted. To simply uncode, all I need to do is right click and choose Uncode. This reference is now no longer part of that code. You'll also notice you've got the option in the right click menu to uncode smaller segments by highlighting them and choosing Uncode, and then selecting which codes you wish to remove them from. It could be that I wish to rename a code itself. As I consider the environment more broadly, I don't really think the label environment down east is appropriate. So I'm going to right click on this code, choose code properties, and then delete down east from the code title. This is now just called environment, and when I click OK, the change is reflected here. Another important way in which I can refine my coding structure is by looking at hierarchying these codes. As I continue to think through my existing coding, it's clear community is part of connection to down east. So I click on community, let go, then click hold to drag and drop community into connection down east, and I can see this is now hierarchied underneath connection to down east. I'm going to do exactly the same with the word local, because this clearly links to connection down east. Next up, I'm going to store water quality underneath water. I'm also going to put fishing industry into this section and put fishing industry decline under fishing industry, showing also how we can have multiple layers of hierarchy. As I reflect further, I think water's part of the environment, and so as I move this into here, you'll see all of those and the entire tree hierarchy moves in here as well. You'll see that these coding stripes reflect the colour of the codes. At the moment they're all just set to randomly allocate a colour. However, I may wish to choose one. So for example, I could click on connection down east, then right click and choose colour to turn this to red. I'm also going to do the same for community and local, also colouring those to red. Again, it's important to remember that this video is an instructional aid. I'd never recommend refining your coding to this extent so early in the process. Quite often you'll find your codes will be expansive and quite messy, and it's only after you've gone through 2 or 3 of your sources that you can begin to refine this in much more detail. Another thing that you need to bear in mind are the numbers for files and references. Unsurprisingly, every single one of these codes is referred to as in just one file because we've only coded a single source. The references shows how many times that has been coded. It's important to remember that the size of a reference is highly variable. It could be a single word, a phrase, a sentence, or an entire source. So they're not necessarily a direct representation of quantity. You'll also notice that the top level codes, such as connection to down east, don't necessarily reflect the coding within them, like community and local. If I want coding at local and community to also be reflected in connection to down east, I need to aggregate coding by right clicking and choosing aggregate coding from children. You'll now notice that the coding from the lower level is now applied at the top. So if I code anything to local, it will automatically be also coded to connection down east. Another really useful thing as you go through is to add a description to each of your codes. So as I continue to develop my coding framework, I can really understand in detail what these mean. These descriptions are a great way to remind yourself of what these codes mean. While they may be very clear to you at the time, as you take a break from research, It's quite easy to forget the minute detail and sometimes the nuance of difference between your codes. There are also some useful exports that can take advantage of any descriptions you type. We can see this now by going to List View, right clicking in the white area at the bottom and choosing Export Codebook. I'm going to choose to include the number of files and references as part of this export. NVivo will then open up Microsoft Word with the full export. You can see here I've got a brilliant representation of my coding framework which shows all of the codes, their level, and how many references and files they've appeared in. You can really see the advantage of having multiple descriptions here. This export makes a fantastic appendices for your thesis or research. I'm now going to revisit my coding one last time, and I'm looking at that connection to Down East theme. Underneath we have community and local, and I'm going to double click into community and read the text here, and then local and read the text here. As I reflect on these further, I actually think I don't need the distinction of local and I want this to be part of community. This is an easy step in NVivo. First of all, I click on the thing that I wish to merge. So I click on local and I choose to cut it. I then choose where I want to merge it into, in this case community, and right click on that, and then choose merge into selected code. This gives me an option screen. I'm going to leave these at the default and click OK. And when NVivo loads, it merges in the coding from local into community, and we can see this reference is now included within the community code. This is where we're going to leave the demonstration that I've been using so far and move towards the full environmental change Down East sample project. In the next video, I'll look at how you can explore coding in a much more expansive project where coding overlaps through several files and different source types. We'll also look at some more advanced coding techniques in later videos.